put a lot of chips in this on the board, you also were seeing an issue of they were power hungry, and there were a lot of inefficiencies into the system when you're trying to design a circuit like that. And finally, the most important aspect, when you have multiple chips, when you're storing your data and you're communicating across, and even storing this data externally in a memory, it was very risky because anybody can hack into it, and this security was not non-existent. So when we come out this solution, this is what the Samsung new bioprocessor gives you. It's a small integrated piece of silicon. It has very low power operation that we have focused on, and I think John talked about it a little bit, and we are going to cover it a little bit here again. The most important aspect is the security is inbuilt in the same chip. So we have a secure element we are planning to integrate. This will enable you and your data to be encrypted before it goes out of the silicon, and you are able to transmit this data securely or store this data securely on your device. So when we look at a little more details, so I would like to highlight here what is bioprocessor's intention. So we have created a silicon, a single chip, which can collect your biometric data and process it securely in a very low power profile and in a very small size. How we are able to do that is by adding all these components, and what I would like to highlight here is there are 3 specialized analog front ends where you can integrate your sensors, and this includes electrocardiogram, or we call it EKG in US as it's more popular as. Then we are talking about PPG, photoplethysmogram, bioelectric impedance. This is also a very key metric to measure your body impedance, to be able to tell about your muscle and body fat. So these are some of these analog front ends we have integrated, and we are seeing a lot of interest from various industries in this area. On top of it, you see here is a DSP. So we added a DSP because all these analog waveforms, and once we convert into digital data, it can be noisy. It can have a lot of you typically, to make it useful, you need to do some filtering, you need to add a lot of standard digital operations, and we could do all those operations in a highly efficient way using a DSP. I will talk a little bit more about it in detail when we go about the DSP section and what kind of filters we have integrated. There is an MCU with a floating point unit, and this is very useful when you're talking about the system software. When you're talking about device design, you have to run the software, you have to have the peripherals enabled and so on. So this is currently being used for system software, but the most important point here is there is processing power in your hand to add additional algorithms to develop applications. So this is what I would like you to focus on when saying, when you enable all these building blocks, how can I as a developer add more applications? So we are going to talk a little bit more about this again. On top of that, you see secure element, which is we talked about. It provides you security by encrypting your data, and the power management. So this is very critical because how we were able to achieve this integration and reducing the footprint on a PCB is by integrating the power management inside the chip. So you don't need external components to design a board like a LD. You don't need a DC-DC converter. If you're familiar with the hardware design, you don't need an external PMIC to run this kind of a silicon. So a quick look at how it works. So you may design any kind of device. It can be a wearable. It can be, when I say wearable, it can be like a band. It can be a clothing. There are various form factors which are possible with this small size chip. You collect this data, you get raw waveforms, and all these are high quality waveforms with our digital filtering and various algorithms which are present inside the silicon. What our target is to help you with is some real health metrics. So what I'm showing you here is some examples. So this is not a thorough list because we are looking for developers to come up with a lot more useful information using this waveform data. And some of the examples are you can calculate your body fat, your respiration levels, your heart rate, and things like blood pressure and so on. So let's come back to the topic which we started with is what are the opportunities as a developer? How do you participate in this growing trend where people are looking for more and more devices to capture data, more and more applications to make use of the data. So first area, as I discussed, is mHealth devices, which is really big. So let me give you one example here. When you go to a doctor, when you are worried about your health, or even in a regular checkup, you must have seen this kind of a machine in hospitals, where you sit on a bed and you have to connect many electrodes to your body, and you see a big machine running next to you. Of course, this in modern day, you see a lot of computers around it. So this is more like a picture from old days. But my point is, this is something which you do maybe once a year for a healthy person, or if you are a high-risk person, maybe doctor will call you in for like 3 or 4 times a year to monitor your ECG. What we have seen in the real thing, and when we talk to the doctors, they say that this is not sufficient because those 3 or 4 times when you go to the hospital may not capture the risk levels you have. So let me give you one example. Like I come from a family of like high risk in heart diseases. So when I went to my doctor for regular checkup, they said, okay, now you need to, maybe we need to monitor you for 24 hours just to make sure that there is no risk in near future. And what they came up with was a Holter machine. I don't know if you've heard about it. So this is a big cassette recorder kind of a thing which gets attached to your body. You have to carry it around whole day, and it's very uncomfortable. They tell you you cannot take a shower, you cannot do a lot of things. And again, it's not really capturing my normal day because I'm very concerned about what is hanging on my chest. So what is possible with this bioprocessor? So I'm going to show you, and I think we showed you a demo yesterday, and it's also there in our booth, is ECG patch. So this is something which we are experimenting. We are doing a trial with using our bioprocessor, and you are able to monitor your ECG for continuous 1 week. And there are a lot of possibilities how you can extend the battery life even further. And this gives doctors a lot of data. This gives a real opportunity for analyzing your heart condition and to capturing the potential diseases early. There are other form factors which are possible, like watch and so on. So there are a lot of opportunities in the mHealth device space, and we are looking for you to look into the options using this chip. You can come up with your own form factor. We are not limiting it to these kind of devices. The other area is, of course, here there is a big amount of interest in adding mHealth kind of features in your existing devices which are popular and you're using it already, like your smartwatches, health bands. Then smartphone itself, like even in our Galaxy Note 4 or a Galaxy S5 from Samsung, you see there are heart rate monitors and so on. What if you integrate more features into these kind of devices? You don't need to have another wearable. So it depends on the use cases, it depends on the consumer, whether they're comfortable wearing another device. So we are making it easy for anybody to integrate these features into any kind of form factor. Now, if you're not into hardware, if you're looking at, okay, I'm a software guy, I'm looking for how do I take advantage in this space. And today, you have an app for everything, as you say it. So what is the exciting new apps you can do? Some examples are simple health monitors. Once you have these devices and these sensors available in the devices, you can target how do you use this data, how do you store this data, how do you really make sense of it, how do you make behavioral changes using this data. When a person knows more about his body, you can really create some innovative apps around it. These are a couple of examples we are showing. These are more from the health perspective. And what you're seeing here is, which we showed you in a demo. So this is kind of an app which can show you real-time health data from your body. And you can monitor on your phone, you can record it, you can send it to your doctor. I'll show you in our case study how we used it and what we learned about it in this kind of scenario. And there are a lot of innovation possible using this kind of form factor. This is the final category I would like to talk about is the health algorithms. So if you are interested in, you're into research and you're looking for new algorithms, this is the perfect platform for you. So here I'm showing you a heart, which has, so when we talk about heart rate today on your health monitors or whatever you're wearing, like most of us, like even I have a watch which gives me a heart rate, it's not sufficient information about your heart. It's just a basic parameter of how fast your heart is beating. Your heart contains a lot of different portions. There is like how is the tissue health, what are the individual chambers, how they're performing. When we talk to the doctors, they say ECG waveform contains a lot of data. It's not just for detecting peaks in the heart rate. And individual part of this, each of these waveform has very significant information about future of your heart health. You can detect some diseases really early if you monitor it on a regular basis. So this is an area where there's a lot of possibility where you can develop new algorithms. Once you have this data in your hand, once you have this kind of thing easily accessible, using the wearable devices, using your smartphones, you can capture this data. You can run these algorithms on your smartphones or in the cloud. There are a lot of possibilities here where you can improve how we look at preventive healthcare, how we look at improving how we live our lives to reduce the number of diseases. So one of the statistics which I was reading is one of the 4 deaths in US is because of heart conditions. So this, and when I look at one of the WHO report, they say this is going to keep going up because there is no way you cannot have a vaccination for heart disease. This is a lifestyle issue. This is an issue which will keep increasing in this modern world, and they are expecting by 2030 or something that it will be 1 in 2 deaths or maybe 1 in 3 deaths. So it's going to go up, and this is a very important part where you can contribute on how we monitor our heart condition early. And this kind of data sensing can really help in this area. So I would like to stop here before getting into more details and quickly run through the key features just to give a little more details about the bioprocessor. So we talked about the analog front end. So this is a mixed signal chip. It has analog front end integrated. You have highly specialized front end with ECG, PPG, and BIA. We have integrated power efficient ADCs. These are of SAR variety, which gives you very high quality, accurate data in digital format, which you can really use it for your algorithms. We have on-chip power management IC, so you do not have to add another piece of silicon when you're designing your products and when you're looking for small size. And as I mentioned, this is the most important part for developers who are looking into the software development side. We have a Cortex M4, which is very easy to develop on, and it gives you a lot of capabilities to extend the algorithms, to write new apps. Then I talked about DSP. We will go into a little more details of it, but it is the most important part where we are trying to limit the power usage and try to keep the long battery life. We have implemented a lot of algorithms in this DSP for biosignal processing. And on-chip encryption, we already talked about this, but this is something which we keep getting asked, that we really need to make sure that the data is not going out of the silicon unencrypted. And to make sure that we are, even though it's a very low power chip, we have added a dynamic voltage and frequency scaling. Because of the SOC background we have, we understand in system LSI that this is one of the most critical part, because it's never enough to reduce how much effort you can put in keeping the battery or the power consumption really low and extending the battery life in this area. Okay, so this we talked about yesterday. Let me go a little more detail on what can you do when you're designing a hardware, how our bioprocessor can help you define different configurations. So here you're seeing a configuration where you're using it in you're associating the bioprocessor with the application processor. So this can be a scenario where you're using either a smartwatch which already has apps processor, or you're using a smartphone and you have a lot of processing capabilities, but why you are adding bioprocessor is to make sure you can capture the health sensor data. And not only that, you can actually connect your sensor data like accelerometer, gyroscope, temperature sensor, and it can give you a kind of a sensor hub functionality. And you can use this data and you can create interesting apps. And in our case study, which we are going to go into a little more detail, and also we show you a demo, it can really act as a fully independent processor which takes care of all the sensor data. It has its own system software. It can transmit this data and communicate through Bluetooth or any other connectivity solution which you think appropriate for your device. So it's very flexible. It has a lot of general purpose ports, which we are going to go into a little more detail later. But basically, what we are trying to show you here is it's very versatile in terms of how you want to visualize your hardware. And we are not limiting the options for you by fixing certain ways of connecting this bioprocessor with your external world. So let's get a little bit more specific here. So before I go into details, I would like to highlight, so We have an early evaluation version, which is going to be available in an EVM format, which we announced with the SDK. And this has a 50 megahertz Cortex-M4 with the included SRAM. Then you have a DSP, which is a Samsung proprietary DSP. It's a very low power processing unit. It's again running at 50 megahertz. We have 5 ADCs with 11-bit resolution. And currently, this EVM will not come with secure element integrated. And we have general purpose ports for helping you design your hardware. But the target for us is this production version, which you see on the right side. And as we discussed, this will definitely have the security component integrated with AES. And the key things I would like to highlight is, based on our learnings with this evaluation version, we have increased the processing capabilities of Cortex-M4. We have increased we have put an on-chip flash so that you can store the data and your software on the chip, and you can even minimize the number of components for designing, for booting your device when you're coming up with the board. Then we have increased the frequency of the DSP to give you better processing power. We included an additional sigma delta ADC, and the resolution of ADC is increased. And we have added some additional ports because of the kind of requests we are seeing, and because of the versatility of this processor, we see that you may need a lot more ports to tie it up with some existing solutions. Here I would like to show you a typical board design, and this big block you see outside, this is the bioprocessor. So all you're doing is, with everything integrated internally, we are targeting, like, you can directly connect your sensors like electrodes and photodiodes. Like for PPG, you need a LED. So we have LED driver also integrated internally. So you only need a LED, which is directly connected to the bioprocessor. You have ECG diode electrodes and also the BIA electrodes. So the analog front end takes care of all the analog processing needs. Your flash takes care of storing the data. You have all these ports which can connect to your Bluetooth or acceleration sensors. You have Cortex-M4 and DSP here, which takes care of your processing needs. And we have this power management unit so that you can connect your battery directly to the board. So this is, I'm just trying to highlight how simple it is to design. Most of the components which you typically see on a PCB are integrated into a single chip of silicon. And our target is to give you not just a small piece of silicon, but a design which is very, very small in size. And you can think of the final use cases where you can really make small products and you can put them anywhere. So I think now we will go to the SDK section. I will try to highlight what tools we are enabling, how you can start using our piece of silicon. So we understand that it's very difficult for a lot of developers to start doing hardware design, and you want to start playing around with it to understand the various ways you can use this and start developing algorithm, apps, and even products with the kind of hardware module we are providing you. So the bioprocessor SDK includes an evaluation module, which has a fully functional board with a lot of ports to configure, and it's very flexible in design. We provide you with the software stack, which includes system software for the board, also some example applications, and a lot of APIs to play around and to start using and start seeing the information right away. We are providing utility applications. I will go a little more details about it. So our idea is that you just need a PC and this SDK, and you can start developing right away. We don't want you to be sitting in a lab or something. We want you to be able to do it anywhere. You can start developing with the bioprocessor. And of course, we will provide you with the documentation, with software tools, and we will support the standard compilers and so on. So you should not find it difficult to start developing. So let's go into a little more details. So here I talked about you need a PC and you need this board. How do we use it? So I talked about the system software application code. So this will be part of the source code you will see when you get the SDK package. What it will contain is some sample applications. We have defined a lot of simple APIs if you are a simple app developer. But because it's available as a source code, so you can extend it, you can create your own use cases and APIs. And then we are providing with a BSP, which is, we call it as a board support package, which includes the software for actually running all your algorithms and your apps on this EVM board. Along with it, we are providing you a debugger tool so that you can actually debug your programs in real time. Of course, you have a firmware downloader, which helps you with downloading the images you are building on your host PC. And then the final piece of this SDK is how do you monitor the signal? So once you are able to run your program, we are providing you with the multiple options. You have a serial term to start to see actual logs or real data. Then there is another option, which is a biosignal scope. So the intention of this biosignal scope is you can visually see the signals, and you can start making sense out of this data when you are working on this EVM. And finally, of course, we have this, we will have a lot of documentation along with to make it easy for you to understand the bioprocessor and the programmer's guide to make it easy for you to use our APIs. So let's have a closer look at our bioprocessor EVM. So this is, I talked about the sensor interfaces. So these are standard sensor interfaces for ECG, PPG, and BIA. So you should not have any trouble in getting your data in to the board. We are providing you multiple options for connecting to the power. So you can use a standard 5-volt adapter. You can use a USB power, or there is a coin battery on the board, which you can use if you want it to be more versatile and you want it to be mobile. Then we have a lot of I/O interfaces in terms of, as we already discussed, about various ports. And then we have a Bluetooth module interface using a UART. We have a serial interface for connecting to your host PC and monitoring the logs and biosignal. So what does the SDK contain? How do we go about capturing the signal and processing it? So this is just a simple flow diagram to explain you that when you see this waveform data from the sensors and through the analog front end inside the silicon, what bioprocessor does is, our goal is to capture and convert this information into real health information, like for example heart rate variability. And all this you can do within the bioprocessor. You don't need any external processing because of the DSP and the MCU which is inbuilt. And of course, we make sure that the quality of signal which goes into this digital blocks is really high using our specialized analog front end and the ADCs. So what does this software platform contains? There are two blocks. One is signal acquisition, which is more like a system software where you are configuring our hardware to capture the data, configuring the AFEs, and how do you want to use the silicon and the hardware. And the second part is the digital signal processing, which is about defining your algorithms. How do you really make valuable health information out of raw data? So the software stack looks something like this. So we have a platform code, which includes sensor software, system software, like for a simple board operations. You have the DSP as a binary and also some APIs which will define. So I'll go a little more details into what the DSP algorithms look like. Then we have connectivity sample software, which is you can use and extend based on your needs of connectivity. And we have the various drivers as an example code for you. At the top, you're seeing the application, which are part of the software stack. So this is something which I would like you to focus on. We are a semiconductor company, so what we can enable you is with some sample applications. So we don't want you to limit yourself and looking at only like a ECG monitor or a heart rate or a heart rate variability. So our intention is to enable this SDK so that you can have sample code, you can start developing, you will see how easy it is to write code on our SDK, and you can think of your own applications. And that's where I mentioned earlier, your MCU comes into picture, where you can actually write code for ARM Cortex M4, and you can see how you can really make use of this data. Now let me talk a little more detail about these utilities we are providing you. So as I mentioned, our intention is for anybody to start developing using this bioprocessor. Now what this biosignal scope gives you is a very similar functionality to a lab oscilloscope, which you need as a big equipment, and not everybody has access to that easily. So what the digital data you're capturing, and it can be either dumped into a file using a serial term, or you can actually use our utility to start visualizing it. And this has all the similar digital oscilloscope features, which you have, like you can use it using a gain or an offset, and you can really start understanding what this information looks like, and you can start thinking in real medical terms or in terms of use cases, and you don't have to worry about how do you interpret this data. So let's get a little more into a little more details about what kind of digital filtering and the biosignal processing we provide in this SDK. So there are two components here you can see. One is the biosignal processing using Cortex-M4M, and then we are talking about digital filters using SRP is just another name for our DSP. And what we have as digital filters are examples are low pass filter, notch filter, squaring function, least mean square filters. So if you are familiar with the algorithms for this kind of use cases, these are very standard filters, and we have implemented that in DSP so that you can call them out from your ARM, and you can actually use them for other algorithms, not just for what we have implemented, like heart rate and ECG monitoring. And one more thing I would like to highlight is we are going to make it easy for you to change the coefficients or use the filters as you like it. And of course, we have the second part, which is the MCU, which is fairly flexible, and it will be available as a source code, and you can actually start modifying and defining your own algorithms. So some of them we have implemented are the peak and valley detection, the RR interval estimation using the ECG and PPG waveform, and to calculate heart rate. Also some of the standard functions like min, max, or average for streaming the data. So I would quickly go over example code. So I know it's not very easily visible, but basic idea what I'm trying to show here is it's very easy to write code. We have standard APIs like you can initialize ECG using ECG init command. You can open the port and you can actually start receiving the ECG data using this board, and it's as easy as you see here. And this sample code will be available as part of the SDK. And what you see is this kind of a waveform, and it's a kind of a real screenshot from our monitors where you can actually start seeing ECG waveform by writing a very simple code. One more thing I would like to highlight is this is one of the unique features of our bioprocessor. You can actually capture two sensor data at the same time, and it is synchronized ECG and PPG data, which is possible because it's a single chip. So what you have available in the market today, if you use discrete components, it's very difficult to define a circuit where you are capturing synchronized data in two sensors. But with this bioprocessor, here what we are showing you is you can actually monitor synchronized ECG and PPG data, and you can really create innovative algorithms once you have this data which is exactly capturing at the same moment, because we are using a single clock in our audio analog front end. So one of the examples is it's also available in our booth. We are able to calculate heart rate using ECG and PPG. And what you're seeing here, which is not very clear in this picture here, there are multiple waveforms here for heart rate, and all of them are synchronized. You can see they are highly overlapped, so that's why you're not able to see various colors here. But this, again, I would encourage you to go to our booth and we can explain you a little more detail, and we have a simulated data there, and we are running a real waveforms which you can see and observe how it is helpful in your algorithm design and writing new apps. And this is just an example of our BIA monitor. This is the bioelectric impedance. So it's as easy as this code where you just initialize the code and you open the port and you can start getting your bioelectric impedance data. So I think I would now go quickly to our case study. We showed you a demo. This device is available in the booth for you to have a look at how small and how efficient this can be. But I would like to share with you a few learnings while we are running these trials with one of the leading hospitals, and how we are innovating and how we are getting this feedback. And this is one good case study for you to start thinking about the problems you may face in the field when you're designing apps, and how you can really use the features we have on the bioprocessor. So first of all, I would like to show you how simple the circuit is. So using our bioprocessor, because it has so many features integrated, all you needed was a flash memory to store data, battery, and a Bluetooth connectivity device. So just one thing I would like to highlight. So this is the bioprocessor evaluation version we are trying out. So in future, we are like in the next version, we will have flash integrated, so there are possibility to do that without an external flash as well. And Here I'm just showing the kind of building blocks of bioprocessor which made it possible to make such a simple design, where we had inbuilt power management, we had analog front end integrated, and we have MCU and DSP within the silicon, and you don't need any external processing power for this kind of product. So now let's look at the app side of the world. So we developed this kind of course, we in partnership with our customer and the hospitals, we are trying to create an easy way to access data. And you saw the demo yesterday, so you can monitor your ECG. This can be a live monitoring, or you can record it. You can calculate your heart rate, you can trace it, and this can be logged into the device. And you can, when you're defining this kind of apps, you want this, the use case of here we are talking about is that the patient is able to control the patch or to use the patch himself, so you can add attachment guides and so on. So this is one thing which we found like this kind of app would need. Now let me show you the use cases, how this kind of a patch and this kind of a app which can enable. So you can actually record the data based on the user input. You can define the period, how much time it takes. So now you see the power of having this kind of a small form factor and integration with a mobile device or the devices you are familiar with. So for a patient, he can record the data, he can load the history, or he can directly communicate to the doctor or the hospital whenever he feels bad. Because when you go to the hospital, maybe you were feeling all right, your ECG was good, and when you come back home, you're not feeling good. So now you cannot take an appointment for another day or maybe more. And then you're talking about, okay, how do I send this data to my doctor? So this is a very useful tool which we learned. Now, the next thing, the learning I want to share is, when a person is moving, your ECG signal is not captured properly. And you must, if you have visited a doctor and you've got your ECG taken, usually you are lying on a bed and you're being asked to be still, don't talk, and so on. So when you are talking about a mobile device and when you're trying to capture your data throughout your day, we learned that you need a fitness mode. Now, with our digital signal processing, we were able to implement a motion artifact suppression algorithm so that you can use this data, you can suppress the noise because of the motion, and we could get a much better signal, which really makes sense to the doctor, and it also helps detect anomalies when you are really working out, you are walking, and this really makes it a full-time monitoring. And these are kind of things which are possible using bioprocessor without any external processing power you need on the mobile device. So this is just one example, but as I said, we are just trying to trigger the thought process. We want you to come up with a lot of other use cases and how you can use the capabilities of this silicon and this kind of form factor and design your own products and algorithms. So quick look at the circuit design once again, just for those who are thinking about hardware. I just want to emphasize again how simple this circuit design and the components are. So now for the algorithm developers, let's have a quick look what this S-patch means. So as I said, you can capture the data, and we have DSP functions like IIR filters, differential filter and squaring function. And we can use MCU for general purpose algorithms like peak detection, RR wave estimator, heart rate calculation, and logging. So this is an example. We were, as you saw in the application, we were monitoring the heart rate continuously, and this can happen in real time using standard functions which are already available on DSP and customizable MCU component where you can decide how you use this data, whether you log it, whether you send it over the air through your connectivity. So we are giving you enough flexibility to design your own solutions using this kind of SDK. Now, I talked about motion artifact suppression. So this is a simple flow diagram of how do you capture a ECG waveform using the functions available in the SDK. And all it takes is you take a ECG signal, you apply the IAR notch filter, and then you pass it through the LMS filter, which is the least mean square function. And like here you see in this block that this is very if you are into digital signal processing, you will understand that this is all it takes to make sure that you suppress all the motion artifacts. And there's an example waveform where we saw a lot of noise in the original signal, which is shown in red. And after motion suppression, motion artifact suppression, we see this blue waveform, which is much more clean, easy to understand, and it's very useful for doctors to monitor your health when you're moving and when you're having a lot of noise in the data. So I would like to conclude here by repeating what we said like yesterday and what we are emphasizing here. So when you're thinking about bioprocessor, what we want you to take away from here is we have tried to design a very small footprint, and what we are seeing when we compare with existing components right there like in the market, if you compare with the discrete components, we see a 95% smaller footprint, and this is purely based on the silicon area. Of course, when you design a PCB, there will be better savings because you're talking about all the routing, and the board design itself is not that easy. We're talking about 50% or better power consumption because of the 45 nanometer process we are using, the integration we have, and the integrated power management IC. And last but not least, its versatility. We think you can use this bioprocessor in many different form factors. You can use it as a standalone. You can use it with an application processor and existing devices. And we believe there is a lot of opportunity here where you can think of new form factors which are not even seen right now by anyone right now. So there's a lot of opportunity as a device developer, as an algorithm developer, as well as app developer. Finally, I would like to encourage you to go to our booth if you have not seen already. We have our EVM there. We have some simulated data to show you and how we are capturing the signals, how we synchronize the data, and it gives you a really good idea of how you can work on these EVMs. Also, we have our S-patch for you to look at and understand how easy it is to design the real-world hardware using the bioprocessor. So now I would like to open the session for question and answer. Yes, please.
So first on the secure element, so we've had a lot of discussion about security. Some people argue that they should be discrete, like an XP will make very strong arguments that secure element should not be integrated. Some issues. But what's Samsung's positioning on why you decided to integrate? Is it sufficiently secure? And I have one follow-up on a different topic.
So I think I'm not a security expert, but let me answer in a simple way. Like, we are a semiconductor manufacturer, so from our side, our idea is to provide that option, because if you look at our S-patch example, it's this kind of a device is directly communicating with a mobile device or something. So you can simply encrypt the data, and it's a very simple solution. I understand that in more advanced use cases where you want, take an example of payments or something. I'm sure people want a little more security here in different formats, because you're talking about apps processor and other components also which are included. So it's more about versatility of this biosignal processor. Like, we don't want this data to be stored in unencrypted way, so we can encrypt on the chip. It's a very important function once you start designing hardware, where you are not worrying about if somebody taps into the hardware itself or somebody listens on your connectivity channel. So it's more about the feedback we are getting in terms of the use cases people are envisioning with this bioprocessor. But I agree with you, there may be cases where it may not be a full solution, but that depends on your use case and your hardware design. We believe it's an important part to make sure that you have an option that you can, to make it secure on the chip, so that your data is already encrypted when it leaves this piece of silicon.
One question on motion artifacts. So in your research, did you explore any sort of touch sensors or other sensors that would allow you to better detect the motion artifact and speak it out rather than just doing a pure software?
I'm not an expert on sensors, but I can take this question, and I think as we have this email ID here, so we can follow up with you. Maybe we can talk offline after this session, and I can introduce you to some of our hardware experts, and they can tell you more about the history or research we have done on this area. Yes, please.
Yet, why did you not include I2C ports right now so I can connect my IC as well?
So let me not comment on why, because it's, as I said, this is an evaluation version. So in product version, as I showed you, definitely we will have multiple I2C ports. So it was more about the use cases which we envisioned at that time. It's an early piece of silicon. So we already have this feedback, and as you can see in our production version, we are targeting to have I2C.
And the second question was, Is the eval version, can I use the eval version to plug in my algorithm into your, the output from your analog signal for the heart rate and PPG?
Yes. So as I mentioned, so the MCU part of the processing is fully configurable, and you can write your own code, and you can use the raw data which is available in the through the APIs which we showed you. And once you have the eval board and the SDK, there will be a full documentation on how you get the raw data. So definitely it's possible. Yes.
I missed yesterday's sessions, but is the chip going to be FDA certified as a hardware platform?
So I don't think I'm an expert in this area. What I can say is this is like, as a semiconductor company, we think we will do our best to make it compatible, but it's about the product designers to get it certified from FDA, because it doesn't help if you have the semiconductor certified.
It doesn't help which?
Like it has to be the product which has to be certified. Again, I think there is a session which we had yesterday from the FDA's which can explain you better. I'm not an expert in this area, so I would avoid commenting on this.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you for attending this session, and I hope that you can make use of the bioprocessor in innovative ways, and you can design some exciting new products. Thanks.